I feel like we're still in our adolescence as a country, and we can't figure out who we want to be.
From Interfaith Alliance, this is The State of Belief. I'm Interfaith Alliance President Reverend Paul Brandeis Raushenbush in New York City.
And I feel like we're still, even at 250 years, we still don't know which America we want to be. And I think there's a big struggle. It is existential because they're mutually exclusive, these two visions. Like, they can't sit together.
Happy Independence Day with Dr. Robert P. Jones, founder and president of the Public Religion Research Institute. As the nation approaches a very different 4th of July, we'll get his insights on the state of our democracy, as well as the beliefs Americans hold that have led to the situation we're in today. We need voices like Robbie Jones to be heard now more than ever. So please make sure you subscribe, share, and rate The State of Belief at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. Our library of past conversations includes well over 100 hopeful, inspiring interviews with guests like Congressman Eric Swalwell, Maggie Siddiqui, writer Jeff Sharlett, Bishop Marion Buddy, and many others. You can help grow The State of Belief with a financial contribution right now. Find out how at stateofbelief.com. And you can support and join the work of Interfaith Alliance at interfaithalliance.org. So before I get into the conversation with Robbie Jones, I want to just say a word about an important principle in American tradition, which is religious freedom. And that is, kind of the reason we do our work. It is this celebration of everyone's ability to pray as they choose or not choose. It's about freedom to express your religion, if you have a religion, and of any religious background equally, and that all of it is equally valued. And I just want to say a word about the Religious Liberty Commission that has come out of the White House. And they are kind of the opposite of that, actually. They claim religious freedom, but actually what they're trying to do is claim religious freedom for a very specific subset of Christianity. And actually what they're doing is insisting that there is a way to be religious in America. And everyone who disagrees with them is going against not only their religion, but against the American principle. And I just want to say I resist that, and I totally reject the principles. This commission that they have created, it's entirely made up of very conservative Christians. It's like one kind of Christianity, and then there's one Orthodox Jew, almost like a kind of a token. And I just want to make sure that we, as people, you who listen to this show, and that we understand religious freedom in America is really about diversity. It's about recognizing diversity and recognizing that we will not agree on everything as far as religion, and we are not supposed to. That's okay. That's actually built into the structure of American society, that we will be diverse in our religious beliefs. And I think it's so important that we continue to underscore that principle, especially on a holiday like 4th of July, being grateful for the freedom to have a religious tradition, whatever that is, including secularism, humanism, whatever your tradition is. Know that I support you in that. And really, Interfaith Alliance supports you in that. And that is a very deeply American ideal of religious diversity in our society. And so I just offer you that as a 4th of July reflection, and encourage you to be proud in your tradition and recognize that you do not have to adhere to anybody else's but your own, and live alongside others who may have a different tradition but are equally valued as human beings and as part of the American society. And now to my guest. Dr. Robert P. Jones is founder and president at the Public Religion Research Institute. He's also the author of a growing list of insightful books that draw upon both his expertise as a social scientist and his background as a professor of religious studies. They include The Hidden Roots of White Supremacy and the Path Towards a Shared American Future, and The End of White Christian America. Dr. Jones writes regularly on politics, culture, and religion for The Atlantic, Time, and Religion News Service, as well as a popular Substack with over 50,000 readers, which you can find at whitetolong.net. It's great to have your expertise for this very different Independence Day. So, Robbie, welcome back to the State of Belief.
Thanks. Glad to be back.
All right. So, first of all, here we are, about to celebrate July 4th, and we are in the 249th year of of the United States, of our republic. What's the State of the Union? Maybe you can, I'm sorry to do that to you, but it really, honestly, next year we're going to be hearing a lot about the 250. Let's talk about the 249. What are you feeling right now? Because, and I'll just set you up a little bit. You have your pulse in a way that many of us are once or twice removed because of your work with the polling, and you're just like all of your research. Yeah. Where are we right now as a nation?
Yeah. Well, so I had an experience this weekend that I think may help a little bit. So I cycle. I started cycling during COVID to kind of, cope, and I was getting older and all that stuff. And it's been like a mental health and as well as physical health saver for me. So I've been biking a lot. I got a buddy of mine that we go cycling in through Rock Creek Park in DC every weekend. It's beautiful space. But last weekend was raining, and decided, we're going to go anyway. And sure enough, you probably know where this is going. Go over a bridge, and they have these really beautiful little wooden bridges in Rock Creek Park. And I hit it at an angle, and the bike just went out from under me, right? And so I hit the ground, banged my head on the rail of the bridge and banged my hip on the thing as I went down. And my buddy was ahead of me, and he heard the crash, and he turned around and looked at me, and he was like, straight face, is like, "How bad?" That's all he said to me, right? And the thing is that, when you've had these moments, it takes you a minute to figure it out, right? And so I'm kind of, touching my shoulder and touching my hip and kind of moving my joints and trying to figure out, okay, I heard my head hit. Am I bleeding? Am I having broken bones? Can I move all my joints? Can I stand? And it just took a little bit to kind of run through the diagnostics, right, of figuring that out. And I eventually, said, no, I think I'm actually fine. I have my helmet on, and I'm good. And then of course he bursts out laughing once he knows that I'm okay, and just kind of watching me bite the dust. But he didn't want to laugh with it. So I think that we're a little bit like that moment of, oh no, we've hit the ground, right? And but kind of self-diagnostic of how bad is it? How badly am I hurt? Are there broken bones? Am I bleeding? Do I need to go to the hospital? Do I have a concussion? How bad is it? I feel like that's kind of the moment we're at right now with the country, and I think those of us who are, inside the bubble, my office where I'm talking to you from right now is 3 blocks away from the White House and all that military parade stuff that we just saw. And, when I walk from my office to the metro, I pass what was formerly Black Lives Matter Plaza that the Trump administration literally jackhammered, didn't just paint over it, jackhammered the street, removed the pavement and repaved, the street, to just remove any trace of that plaza that goes right down to the White House. It's 16th Street going straight into Pennsylvania, where the White House is. So all that, I think those just live inside the bubble have a real sense of, oh, this is bad. This is really bad. And it's probably hospitalization bad for sure. It's trauma bad for sure. Maybe we don't quite know how bad it is, but we know that it's not a blip. We know that it's not a slight, bruise or a scrape. It's something, but I'm not sure that message has gotten out fully yet. It's happened all so quickly.
Exactly right. And I think, you sound alarmist when you say, actually, this is, I'm using the term existential. Are we really going to be, Are we going to be the same country? Are we going to make it through? And I do think that, I like the metaphor. I'm sorry that you had to experience the metaphor, but
well, I'm fine, right? So you should say,
yeah. Okay, so let's hope that you are actually the exemplar. But maybe what we can just start with is there any polling that you've done recently on kind of where we've come to in the last 5 or 6 months, where how is the country understanding our well-being as we approach this 4th of July?
Yeah, well, we like a number of other polling organizations tried to do a little pulse taking to kind of continue our little body metaphor here of the public at the Trump 100-day mark, right? So 100 days into office, released that just a few weeks ago, and it's kind of a mixed picture. Like on the one hand, Trump remains fairly unpopular. His favorability numbers are underwater. The numbers for favorability for J.D. Vance and Elon Musk are even worse. So he's not a popular, president. When we polled on the things that he's been doing and on things that, like from the executive orders, like tariffs, these kind of efforts at mass deportation, none of that stuff polls well. Like the public is not behind it, but there is this huge partisan divide, and basically Republicans are behind it. So and it's this classic sense of what social scientists sometimes call asymmetric polarization. So yes, we're divided, but it's not like evenly divided. It's really Republicans are the outlier here, but they're so extreme that they pull the middle. They pull the weighted average of everything up. But in fact, political independents are much closer to where Democrats are right now than they are to Republicans. So you basically have this kind of like Democrats and Republicans over here, and Republicans like way out over there, especially on things like immigration and these kind of harsh, immigration tactics. I mean, it's just it really is just remarkable. So I would say like there's this sense of like in the public at large, opposition to this. And if we remember too that when Trump was elected, I keep reminding everyone, one, if you only count voters, he didn't get to 51%, right? Even of the people who voted. But more importantly than that, if you back up again, nearly 4 in 10 Americans didn't vote in this last election. So the election was decided between the 30% of people over here and the 30% of people over here who voted, right? And I think you see that reflected in the polling. So there's nothing like a mandate. A lot of things in, Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill that's going to do more to make the wealth gap, hurt the poor and make the wealth gap bigger than anything we've seen in our lifetimes if it gets passed. Wildly unpopular, most of the things that are in that bill, but most people don't know what's in that bill. And that's the problem.
Yeah. And what about the attacks? I think that one of the, there are these policies and, that we can talk about, but in addition to all of that, there's like just been a systematic attack on the institutions that kind of make up America, which include higher education, which include, institutions like libraries, institutions like, arts institutions, NGOs, civic society, judges, and the courts. All of that, kind of the policies is the terrible thing, but that's within the bounds of normal politics. What has struck me, and the reason I feel like we're in the hospital a little bit, have been these repeated attacks. Some of it through what Elon Musk was running, and just like the USAID and Department of Education, all of this, even when they've had to be reinstated, the disruption of American government and American institutions. So I promise this isn't just going to be a doom and gloom show. We're going to talk about America writ large, but I just wanted to start with the kind of question of how are we doing? Have you done any polling on that kind of stuff, like the attack on these institutions that kind of are together make up the skeleton of America?
Yeah, I mean, when we ask about like mass firing of federal workers, like Americans 2-1 oppose it, right?
Yeah,
I mean, this is not what they signed up for. This is not what
right.
they even those who voted for him. For most of them, this is not on the agenda, right? So I think this to kind of break everything, attack kind of everywhere is really not again. It's not popular. It's it's only the kind of hardcore partisans on one side that oppose it. But again, as Americans as a whole, it's 2-1 that oppose these kinds of, slash
Yeah,
and burn,
yeah,
break everything in sight. And I think they see it like that. They see it as a kind of carelessness,
yeah.
callousness and carelessness.
I
Yeah.
like those two words for it. Let's talk a little bit about the way religion is playing out in this moment, and before we get to now, I just want to because we're going into July 4th and it's a time to think about America and
And
what it went into the founding of America. And you have done really important work about, the kind of inherent, racial inequality that was at the founding and which is, such a important part of it. But at the same time, one of the most interesting things that happened at the founding was how the founders understood the role of religion in American society,
yeah.
and this real effort at recognizing that the only way to achieve thriving of religion was to not establish one religion.
Yeah.
And I just think I don't think we can say that enough on July 4th, how
Yeah.
important that contribution. I don't know if there's any other country at that time. I mean, I think it's one of the great contributions of America was the idea we're going to found a country and we're not going to found it on religion. How amazing is that? And in doing
Yeah.
so, religion thrived. And so talk a little bit about that as
Yeah.
someone who is a historian, but also has looked at how religion has functioned throughout our 249 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is why we had in the, 19th century, particularly, we had uh, Alexis de Tocqueville and G.K. Chesterton and Max Weber all coming to America, right? To think, wow, how did they do this? And what's the secret sauce? What's the formula? And like Chesterton, like he said, yeah, I mean, it's the only country that's founded on a creed. And by
Right.
a creed, he didn't mean a religious creed. He meant a set of principles contained in the Constitution. That's what makes you American, right?
Right.
If you look back to, I know you've talked about this a lot, but this kind of first early correspondence between George Washington and a synagogue, right? The
Yeah.
Touro synagogue, right? Where they're saying, look, do we have to be Christian to be first class citizens in America? And he was like, no, the only thing you have to do is to kind of believe in the Constitution and pledge yourself to uphold those principles. That's what makes you
Right.
truly American. And that's like from the get go, right? We've got that. And you and I both, have Baptist roots. And it's worth noting that, and this is the great irony to me, as someone who grew up Baptist, and I'm old enough that Baptists were still talking about separation of church and state when I was younger.
Yeah.
We don't do so much anymore, at least the Southern Baptist version of them. But the great irony here is that one of the reasons why we have religious liberty written right into the First Amendment is precisely because there were a lot of dissenting groups, right? And Baptists were among those dissenting groups from, for example, the Anglican Church, right?
Right.
And in many early colonies, like Virginia, for example, the early colony of Virginia, if you were Baptist, you couldn't set up a church, you couldn't perform marriages.
Massachusetts.
Yeah,
I mean, Roger Williams chased out of Massachusetts. I
yeah,
mean, this is just a really important thing for, if we're going to celebrate in July 4th, our 249th, let's celebrate that. And especially in the face of, again, what the dominant ethos of this administration is that actually there is an establishment, and it's a very conservative Christian one, under which everyone else is, if you want to bend the knee to it, you're allowed to stay. But it's very, we are in a very, it's another one of those critical moments where you're kind of like, are we losing blood here? Because, with the establishment of the Anti-Christian Bias Task Force and the establishment of a religious freedom, I don't know if you saw this, the Religious Freedom Task Force that Pam Bondi convened, Christians, by the way, all Christians, one Orthodox Jew. One of Guthrie, my colleague Guthrie, who is went, and he was just like, their grievances. They're still talking about Biden and how terrible Biden was, and what a terrible anti-Christian Biden was. And this is the ploy. And so anyway,
and I think the thing too, and they were making. I saw a couple of report outs from that meeting, right? And they were praying in the name of our holy Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, sitting right next to the rabbi, right?
I mean, and this is a government commission.
Yeah, and we should prefer Christian rulers, like those kinds of things, right? Straight from a government.
It's wild. Up next, much more with Robbie Jones. You can hear full episodes of The State of Belief anytime on our website at stateofbelief.com. You'll also find links to topics we discussed this week, as well as transcripts and more. And make sure you subscribe at stateofbelief.com/subscribe. You're listening to The State of Belief, where religion and democracy meet. Welcome back to The State of Belief. I'm Interfaith Alliance President, Reverend Paul Brandeis Raushenbush. My guest is Public Religion Research Institute President, Dr. Robert P. Jones. I would love the Robbie Jones, and this is like going to go viral, I know, because I'm going to give you the floor for the 2.5 minute version of American religious history over the last 249 years. I want the highlights.
Oh my God.
I want you to explain American religious tradition in 2.5 minutes of all the highlights over 249 years. And and believe me, don't get it wrong, because we're gonna point it out. So go. I want to hear it. Let's go.
Right.
What's your take?
I'll just insert my alternative facts if you start fact checking.
Nice start. Really good start.
Yeah, I mean, well, what I was thinking when we were talking is if there is any silver lining to the wholesale attacks on the hard-won lessons of our Constitution and our founding principles, it is maybe that we'll realize again why they're there, right? So we'll remember, okay, way back when, when, our Baptist forebears couldn't perform marriages, couldn't form churches, they thought there was something wrong with that, right? In a free republic, that everyone should be able to practice their religion, by the dictates of their own conscience. And those were hard-won freedoms, right? And they weren't a slam dunk. I mean, there were good arguments on the other side of that. And, we came out with a robust First Amendment that I think was born out of the real experience of religious tyranny in this country, and in the countries that many of the Europeans that came here were fleeing. So I think that kind of remembering that, and it's this complicated overlay, of course. At the same time, we're setting up freedom for here. I have to kind of tell this split screen. We're also, of course, displacing and denying freedoms, right, for the native inhabitants here. And we have to kind of remember those blind spots, right, and ironies that are there. I actually see this as kind of an unfolding over time where, I'm actually not one who believes that the arc, of history always bends toward justice in some kind of automatic way. I mean, I think it bends where we bend it. And so I think that, why it's so important for us to understand this history And I do think it has been this unfolding history of widening the tent. And so, it wasn't for Muslims and Buddhists originally, right? It was really Christian factions that were fighting it out, and in which Christian factions could get freedom. And then eventually the principle gets lodged, and the tent gets broader. And I think we're in this moment of great backlash, right? And regression. And so, like, if I can see, like, and it's been in fits and starts and all of that, but I do think the moment we're in, if we look back 100 years from now and we look back at this moment, this will be a moment like the overthrow of Reconstruction, right? After the Civil War. It'll be that kind of moment in the history books where there was a set of very uneven progress, to be sure, but there was movement toward this kind of wider acceptance, full embrace of religious liberty, no religious test for office, all those things, and really living that out, not just in word, but in actuality, as the country became really lived into that reality and those principles. And then we have this huge backlash, right? Trying to reclaim what is really old school Christendom, right? A kind of white Christian nationalist state, like an ethno-religious state. And I think that's really the backlash that we're seeing. And that's where the real battle is. Do we want to live in an ethno-religious white Christian nationalist state, or do we want to live in a pluralistic democracy, right? And that question has never been more real than it is right now.
I think that's like, we have July 4th, and that's an important thing. But
Yep.
there was an effort to really observe Juneteenth.
Yeah.
And that was a really important recognition of a moment when truly slavery, the last enslaved people, learned of their liberation, and there was an effort to actually make that like a national holiday that we would all learn about and understand how hard fought that was. My sense is that this year is being like diminished. I mean, what is your sense of how Juneteenth is being understood? I think it's still a federal holiday, or it was
It is
declared
a federal
one.
holiday. Yep.
But my sense, and from what I've seen of reports, is that corporations are pulling back from Juneteenth, and there's like and I just think that's like part of this backlash that you're talking about. So tell me your understanding of that, and if you've seen any polling that is like also like reinforcing this sense of like backlash.
Yeah. I was aware of Juneteenth even as a white guy growing up in the South because it's my birthday. And I had spent some early years in Texas where it was actually pretty widely celebrated, right? Because that's the origin. It was in Texas where that news traveled. So it was kind of on my radar screen. I actually think we have a great opportunity in front of us. It's fairly new, and I have to say, like, I think most white people don't know what to do with it, right? There's not, in the white community, there's not traditions. Like in many African-American communities, there's traditions. Like these have been celebrated for decades and decades and decades, but there's not that kind of, so I think we're gonna have to learn some new traditions. And I actually think that this kind of space between July 4th, which often can kind of, devolve into kind of jingoistic, USA, kind of wholly uncritical and even dangerous kinds of nationalism. I think actually holding these two, if we can hold these two holidays together and kind of like a stereoscopic view, right, where we actually see them both in the same space. And I wrote a thing last year kind of arguing that we should treat them like, kind of borrowing from our Jewish friends, like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right? And the days of awe, right? And you think about them together, and they have different emphases and different moods even, but you think of them together, and there's something about the wholeness of the kind of somber repentance and the celebration of new life. I think we could do something like that with Juneteenth and the 4th of July, that everybody, right, could celebrate. But this year, I mean, we'll see because Trump has like wholly ridiculed Juneteenth in the past, and every time Biden would put out something, he would, get on X or Truth Social and put something, ridicule about it being a ridiculous fake holiday and that kind of thing. So whether the White House will actually issue a statement will be really interesting, and what it says, I think, will be
Yeah,
really interesting.
this is going to be released after Juneteenth. So those of
Yeah,
you who are
we'll know.
who are listening, check it out because it will be very interesting to see like how this is framed from the White House and from others. What if you look forward to 250, our 250th. What is and thinking about specifically about religion in society, like what is, if you could write a headline for religion and America 250, what would your headline be as far as like where we are?
Yeah. I mean, I still feel like the country, I feel like we're such still in our adolescence as a country, and we can't figure out who we want to be. That's what it
Mm.
feels like to me, right? So identity crisis,
Wow.
kind of, I mean, we both got kids. I've, have one current teenager, and I've lived through another, another parenting another teenager, and like that, what you get in those adolescent years, is this kind of careening sometimes between like one pole and another, and you never know
Huh.
which kid's going to
Wow.
wake up that morning, and it's all because like there's this, you're figuring it out, you're trying on different things, like which one is me, which one is not me, and I feel like we're still, even at 250 years, we still don't know which America we want to be. And I think there's a big struggle. I do think it is existential, because they're mutually exclusive. These two visions, like they can't sit together.
Mm.
One of them's going to subsume the other. They just can't coexist. There's too much dissonance between these two visions.
Right. And I think it goes back to the moral arc of the universe. Like, it's not, a lot of it is up to us and what we
Yeah.
decide to do and what we decide to do in this moment. And, with any resources that we have to us. If you could invite our listeners to do one thing this July 4th, but
Mm,
more broadly, like what is the one thing that you would like? Because everybody's saying, "Oh, what can I do? What can I do?"
I
It's like,
know.
well, I mean, and what would you suggest they do?
Yeah, I think everybody has a lane. So I just think people should find their lane. And everybody has something to do. If you're a writer, you write. If you're an artist, you create. If you're a business person, you think about how your company is operating in this space. But like we all have a lane, and whether that's like, yeah, inside a home, inside a business, inside a church or a synagogue or a mosque, like they're all there are roles for all of us to play, because there is a fight going on, right? For
Right.
I know Biden, used this term maybe a little too much, but I do think it's true. This kind of the soul of America, right, really is in many ways at stake right now, and it's not new. I mean, that's the thing, is that these things come to a head, I think, at particularly pregnant moments in history, and we're in one of those right now. And it's at those moments where we actually can do more. I think you can't manufacture them, but when they're here, there's stuff to do. And I would just encourage everybody to like find your lane, like whatever it is, right? And what's your skill set? What's your circle of influence? But there's something for all of us, to do, to use your, going to get all biblical on this, right? We'll dust off my, Pentecostal roots to here. We'll have like, we've all got a gift of the Spirit, right? And God's given us those gifts for the edification of the body. And it's time for us to kind of dust them off and get to work.
Oh, you can take the kid out of what is it, Alabama, Mississippi? Where were you?
Mississippi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mississippi. But yeah. Okay. Let me ask you one more question. Like,
Yeah.
what if you could do a magic poll, and polling that you probably can't do in real life, but is there some, what are you really curious about right now with American population? And I mean, I think that there's something that we're not understanding about like our people right now? Like, and I'm not even sure it's something you can poll for exactly, but
Yeah.
like, what is your curiosity about American population vis-a-vis religion, or just like our essence? Like, what is the question that you would love to be able to like just press play and have bloop and this is and know the answer to?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's always things we're thinking about. The big picture thing, which it's always the more abstract things that it's hard to get at, and polling's not really that good at getting at abstract things. But the things I continue to just kind of think on is, there's like these narratives of like Trump is so good at telling narratives of disruption and destruction, right? Chaos, and he's offering order, right? But like first there's destruction, there's chaos, there's evil run rampant in the world, and like I'm the only one who could bring order to it. There's like that narrative, and then there's like this other kind of narrative, like that's not a narrative of disruption, but it's a narrative of continuity, right, and growth, and adjustment. Like, yeah, actually, we have to make some adjustments, right? But like we're going to kind of keep learning how to be the better parts of who we are, right? It's not a disruption where everything goes to hell, right, and has somehow got to be resurrected by the great leader. That's, I think, disaster. But like this sense of like, yeah, look, yes, we've made mistakes. Yes, we've, maybe made some wrong turns here. Yes, we need to adjust this, or more of this, less of that, all of that, right? But it's a trying to bring, to take Lincoln's, great language. How do we conjure, I think Trump conjures our worst demons. How do we conjure the better angels of our nature, right? And kind of push them into the future, right? How do we do that? And so I have no idea how you poll on those things, but like, how do we kind of get at that sense of people and getting people to trust? But I think the biggest problem is the language that we see, so coming from Trump is so much that, and you see it in authoritarian regimes, it is so destructive to the fabric of democracy, because it basically says you cannot trust your neighbor. Your neighbor may be the instrument of Satan, right? Your neighbor is evil and complicit in evil. And like, that's just a death knell for democracy, right? We have to have some basic sense that even the people that we disagree with, and we think are like woefully wrong, right, on whatever it is, some sense that they are acting in good faith, and that they will act in good faith, right? And that basic sense of civic trust, I think, has also been just so damaged and so eroded. I mean, it'll be a generation's work to restore that.
All right. Well, Dr. Robert P. Jones is a founder and president of Public Religion Research Institute, a nonprofit, nonpartisan source of facts and data in an age of misinformation and lies. His important books include The Hidden Roots of White Supremacy and The Path to a Shared American Future. And you can find his Substack at whitetolong.net. Robbie, thank you for being with us on The State of Belief, and I hope that you have a beautiful 4th of July, and peace be with you.
Thanks, Paul. So appreciate all the work that you guys are doing at Interfaith Alliance. Thanks so much.
Who do you know who would get a lot out of this discussion? Please share The State of Belief with them, and be sure to subscribe to The State of Belief at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. We need your help to keep making The State of Belief. Please make a financial contribution today at stateofbelief.com. That's stateofbelief.com. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of Religion News Service or Religion News Foundation. The State of Belief is produced by Ray Kirstein and is a production of Interfaith Alliance. Become a member today at interfaithalliance.org. And be sure to join us next week. I can't wait. Until then, I'm Paul Brandeis Raushenbush on The State of Belief, where religion and democracy meet.